All right. What happens when we're dividing a decimal by a whole number? And it doesn't work out so nicely. Let's suppose that we wanted to do the division 13.2 divided by 5. Again, looking at the fraction notation, that's 132 tenths divided by 5 wholes, or 132 tenths times 1/5. That'll be 132 over times 1, but I'm not going to write that, over 10 times 5. And now our hope would be that 5 is a factor of 132. But looking at this, I think it's pretty clear that that's not what we find. In fact, 5 is not a factor of 132. Now, we could go through all of those steps that we saw before to rewrite this as a decimal. But I want to look at this from another perspective now. What if, before we began, we multiplied the numerator and denominator of our fraction by 10? Well, now 5 is a factor of 1,320. And in fact, we can divide 5 into 1,320. 5 goes into 13 twice. 5 goes into 32 6 times. 5 goes into 20 4 times. So 1,320 is 264 times 5 over 100 times 5. The 5's cancel, and I get 264 100ths. That's 2.64. 2.64. Look at what happens when I write the decimal point in here. The decimal point in my answer is still above the decimal point in my dividend. What's the difference? I needed to add this extra 0 onto the end. And in fact, I wouldn't have needed to predict that before I started dividing. I could just be dividing, see that I have something left over, and add this extra 0 onto the end to see what happens. So, if we're dividing a decimal by a whole number and it's not coming out evenly, we can't leave a remainder because, frankly, it's too hard to interpret what that remainder would mean. Remainder 2, but in the tenths place? I don't really understand what that means. Instead of leaving a remainder, this is what we do. We add on a 0 after the decimal point. This is crucial, right? Adding a 0 to the right of the decimal point doesn't change the value of our dividend. So we can add on a 0 to the right of the decimal point and see if we can get things to work out evenly. When we're adding this 0 to the right of the decimal point, we're multiplying the numerator and denominator of our dividend by 10. So we're not changing the value of anything. We're just expressing the dividend in a way that's more useful to us. Let's see another example of this. Suppose we wanted to divide 0.21 by 25. Well, we would divide 25 into 0.21, write the decimal point in our answer, above the decimal point in our dividend, and then forget about it. 25 goes into 0, not at all. Into 2, not at all. In fact, into 21, not at all. But this decimal is 21 100ths, 1 2 digits. That's the same as 210 1,000ths. So I can add an extra digit to the right of the decimal point. And again, I'm going to be very careful of how I line these things up. I'll have 25 into 210. I think that goes something like 8 times. 25 times 8. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 4 is 200. So yes, 8 times, because 8 times 25 is 200. I still have something left over, namely this 10. So I can add yet another 0. I now have 2100 over a 1 followed by 4 zeros. Bring down this 0. I know 25 goes into 100 4 times, because 4 times 25 is 100. Nothing left over. And now before I give my answer, I need to attend to the decimal places. I have my decimal point way over here, and nothing in these two places. So I'll need to write in zeros to hold them. So my answer, 0.0084. All right, I'm going to give you one of these to try. Remember, continue adding zeros until there's nothing left. Divide 14.3 by 8. Pause the video and try this now. All right, so I'll have 8 into 14.3. 8 goes into 14 once, referring to the multiplication table now for multiples of 8. 1 times 8 is 8. Subtract 14 minus 8 is 6. Bring down the 3. 8 goes into 63. Not 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. Only 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. Borrow to do the subtraction. 13 minus 6 is 7. Something is still left. So I will add a 0, noting that it's to the right of the decimal point. Bring down the 0. 8 goes into 70 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. I subtract. 10 minus 4 is 6. Still something left, so I need another 0, which I bring down. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. Still something left. Another 0, which I bring down. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is exactly 40, so nothing is left. And now before I answer, I need to see where should my decimal point be. The decimal point in my dividend was here, so the decimal point in my quotient is here. 14.3 divided by 8 is 1.7875.